Good morning, my creative friends. So great to be here with you all this morning. All right, it's helpful if I put my microphone on, get all the technology going. Good morning and welcome to Painting in Your PJs with Minette. Yes, it's April and I'm still wearing my Christmas pajamas because they're so stinking soft and comfy, and it's still really cold here at night. So don't laugh at me. All right. Why, there we go. Okay, now I'm seeing all the things get started. I'm super excited about today's conversation and haven't done any talking yet this morning, so my voice is a little bit froggy and it will warm up here in a minute. So, this is going to be a conversation around why is it so hard for women in midlife to find our purpose? We get really stuck and caught up. I hear this from so many of my clients is, I don't know what my purpose is anymore. And I think there's some really valid reasons for that. And some great questions that we can ask ourselves. And I have those questions for you because you know I love a good journal prompt. And I also want to show how I would use a mind map as a way to start thinking my way through my creative purpose. And I'm a huge fan of Good Morning Cindy, of the author Eric Maisel, who has written so many books about creativity, and he has a book about life purpose. And he talks about the definition of life purpose being to lead a meaningful, values-led life. And I really appreciate that concept. And he also says that we don't just have one purpose, we actually have many purposes. And I believe that's true. So to back up just a little bit, I'm going to grab my markers over here because I'm thinking I'm going to want my bucket of markers. To back up a little bit, let's pause for just a second and do a definition. Hello, Tamara. Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you found me too. Hey, Becky. Good morning. So, Becky, remind me where you are. Is it morning or is it later in the day for you? And one of my favorite questions about purpose is this idea of, do you feel alignment between what you do, why you do it, and the impact you want to have on the world? So, alignment between what you do, why you do it, and the impact you want to have on the world. To me, when I feel aligned, I'm less worried about purpose. But here's the thing, as women in midlife, and midlife can be anything from 40 to 50 to 60, as we start to live longer, Iowa, awesome. So it's still morning for you. Beautiful. As we start to live longer, then midlife also gets a little bit later. And really, people have different definitions of midlife. And I'd love to hear what your definition of midlife is. And if you think you're in midlife or beyond, at 59, I probably lived a little more than half of my life, and I have another 30 years to go at least. And I'm still in the middle of my life, and I've lived a long, wonderful life, and there's so much more to come. But what happens, and probably started happening in my mid 40s, was life starts to change dramatically. So we're growing babies, at least I was, who are now young adults. We're often in midlife shifting careers or thinking about our career, or got to a certain point in our career where we're either bored or we're starting to ask what's next. You might be at a place where you're facing retirement or you're newly retired. You might be looking at your life going, the kids are gone, I'm an empty nester, relationships change, and they call women right now, especially sort of that 50 to 70 age range, as a sandwich generation, because we're often raising kids or raising our grandkids and dealing with aging parents all at the same time. Plus, our bodies are changing us. It's like our bodies start to rebel against us at a certain stage of life due to hormonal changes of perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and then all of the ways that our bodies are saying, hey, hello, I need your attention. So it's hard to find the mental space to slow down and pause long enough to consider what's my purpose. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you look around and you're like, what have I been doing with all of my time? What have I been doing? I'm spinning out, I'm taking care of all the things I've spent my whole life taking care of others. I got an email from a client recently who said exactly that. She said, I had all these plans recently to she's in my Creative Renaissance program, our year-long group coaching program. And she said I was going to spend the weekend working on the projects. I'd set the time aside, and my kids showed up in need of help and attention, or the husband shows up, or a parent needs you, right? Or, hey, can you watch the grandkids? Like, all these things happen that consistently pull us away from what's most important to us. So we lose sight of ourselves. We start to ask, well, who am I? We look in the mirror and we feel a little bit lost and we don't know which direction to go. So the first thing to do is to commit to a little reflection time. One of my 6 keys of a creative renaissance is deep reflection. So today I want to do some deep reflection on purpose, because when we bring ourselves back into alignment between what we do, why we do it, and the impact we want to have on the world, and world could be partner, family, community, or globally, depending on your perspective. And I find that, I've been having interesting conversations on ageism lately about people wondering, well, if I left my job, I have a client who's about to turn 60 and in a job she doesn't love, not quite ready to retire. And she's like, could I get another job at 60? Am I hireable? So we start to question our relevance, our ability to make a contribution. Do people value us and want to hear what we have to say? So all of these things are spinning around in our heads like crazy. And at the same time, there's this longing to connect to ourselves, a longing to connect to our inner artist, a longing to bring creativity back into our lives and not keep waiting and putting it off. Over the years, I've had so many people say, oh, I'll get to that when I'm retired. Oh, I'm about to retire. I'll have time then. Well, I find that people in retirement are often busier than they were when they were working, because they start to fill their time with all kinds of things because they're not quite sure what to do with themselves. Well, if that's you, hopefully some of what we're going to do today is going to help. So I'm going to go ahead and change my camera here. All right, let's move things around a little bit. And I want to just kind of mind map our way through a variety of questions that I have created that can help you start to ask yourself different questions about your life and what it is that you want the most. And I want to do that in a fun visual way. So if you follow me, my guess is that you're pretty much a visual thinker, and that you love art and creativity, and you may love doing all the things. And I'm super excited because tomorrow morning on the show, I think we've been working hard behind the scenes on our brand new quiz. It's all about what's your creative superpower. So today we're going to talk about purpose. Tomorrow we're going to talk about your creative superpower. And then how do we align those two in a way that feels meaningful and useful going forward in our lives from here. So I've done mind mapping on the channel before, but if you're not familiar, don't worry. I will do a little description. Change up my lights here so they're a little more on the page. That's better, not so dark. Is anyone not familiar with what a mind map is? If you're watching live, just let me know. Carol, did I say good morning? Good morning, good morning. I'm always so appreciative of you guys being here, listening to my rambles early in the wee hours of the morning, especially my California friends. All right, taking a sip of coffee. So in its essence, a mind map is a visual thinking tool. The concept was created by a guy named Tony Buzan, and he has some great books and teachings about mind mapping. And I have fallen in love with it as a way to get myself unstuck or to get clarity about ideas, or is a different way to start to see the interconnectedness of all things. And normally I would do this in pencil, but I'm feeling like this morning I need color. So I woke up thinking, oh, do I want to write? Do I want to draw? I don't know what I want to do. I have a big blank canvas sitting on my easel waiting for me. And I realized that my spirit this morning just needed some color. So I'm just going to have some fun with colors. So a mind map starts with a central question, concept, or idea right in the center. Okay, these are not going to be super fun for writing, but I can draw my lines. But what is my purpose? And my intention today is to draft a possible mind map for my book that I'm writing, so that there's a blank template in my book that people can just fill out. Now it's probably going to be black and white, but I'm still going to have some fun with color. So when you start a mind map, one of the ways that you start to create some arms, almost as if they were sort of synapses of our brain. That's better. And on each of these little thought threads, if you will, there's going to be a different concept or idea. And where are my prompts? Let's see. I have 10 of them. So I normally love doing this on really large sheets of paper, so there's plenty of room for thoughts and ideas to grow, but you can always tape sheets of paper together and expand your mind map. All right, I'm going to get a few of these on here and then we'll get them started. So the first area of consideration about starting to discover your purpose is to reflect on your passions. And for me personally, as a multi-passionate creative, this could end up being a really huge area of the mind map. But some things to think about, some categories to think about here. So now we want to create some categories. We have our main thought line here. And a thing to think about might be activities that bring me joy. And after we are done with the mind map, I will share a picture or a link to download the mind map in the description of the video. So if you want to print it out and work on your own, I will do that. So causes that you care about. Are two ways to start to investigate this idea of passions. Activities, I'm trying to think if there's another way I want to say that. So we're going to start here with activities that bring me joy and causes that I would say I care about. So for me, this would be art, learning, adventures in nature, causes that I care about deeply, literacy, like making sure everyone in the world knows how to read and write, because when we know how to read and write, we have choice and control over what happens to us. I care about the environment. And I care about the environment sometimes in small ways, recycling. I care about, organic fruits and vegetables. I care about clean air and what can I do to reduce my own carbon footprint. Other causes that I care about as a mom of two queer kids, I care about issues related to the LGBT community, right? That's very important to me. I care deeply about education, my own and other people's. So now that even just looking at this, I start to ask myself, how can I do more of these? And coming back to that primary question of alignment, let's write that up here at the top so we keep top of it. Alignment between what I do, why I do it, and the impact I want to have. And as a lifelong entrepreneur and business owner, I think a lot about impact, right? I think a lot about who am I being in the world and how am I serving others? So another way to say impact is how am I showing up in service to what's important to me? So I get to ask, if I'm going to spend time making art, learning new things, enjoying adventures in nature, are those in alignment with the causes that I care about? Yes, I can always be educating myself more about these causes. The more time I'm in nature, the more committed I am to the environment. And I can use art to explore these topics that are important to me. So I start to see how something as simple as what brings me joy and what do I care about can give me clues about my purpose. Hopefully this is making sense to everybody. And if not, please just ask questions at any time. The next thing we want to think about is our strengths. And when you've lived a lot of years and you've done a lot of things and things have started to become a lot easier, you've learned a lot, you've explored a lot, what can happen is we forget that these things are strengths because they're so innate in us, they become effortless and easy that we forget that they are our strengths. So these strengths can be two kinds of strengths. They can be our natural abilities, like gifts that we were born with. Like you meet those people that just have a natural enthusiasm for life and ability to make people feel comfortable. That's a natural ability. But some of our strengths are learned. So one of my natural abilities is making people feel welcome in my home and making them feel safe, right? Another of my natural abilities is writing. And that's also learned. I got better at it. So I could add more there, but learned, right? I speak Spanish. That's a learned ability. Coaching is a learned ability. Communication is something that I have improved over time. I was pretty bad at it when I was younger, but no one teaches us how to do that. Some people seem to have a natural ability, a natural empathy, a high, what I would call, EQ, right? A high emotional intelligence, but this can also be learned. So we start to look now at what am I passionate about? How can my strengths also support those passions? And we just continue to grow and progress through this conversation. This isn't a work of a few minutes or an hour. This might be a work over a few days or a weekend. And then one of the things I talk a lot about here are values. You cannot rediscover, reconnect your sense of purpose unless you're very clear about what your core values are. And Brene Brown says we should only have one primary core value that we're willing to die for, to put a stake in the stand for. And for her, that's vulnerability. Now, I've been working with and teaching core values and using core values assessment since way back in 2006 when I got my very first coaching certification. And for me, core values are the guardrails of our life, right? They're the thing that makes our life meaningful. As Eric Maisel said, living a life of purpose means living a values-led, meaningful life, a values-led, meaningful life, right? And so knowing your core values is so important. And I have a whole mind map on why to know why you need to know your values and then how to figure those values out. Good morning, Yvonne. It's still really early over there in California. So here we would list out, I usually tell people pick your top 5 core values. And oftentimes we find it so hard to pick. But when you really start to consider values, your values can, like integrity, honesty, communication, even causes that I care about, right? Environment can go under integrity, because when I'm in integrity, I'm doing the right thing. I feel whole and complete. So integrity is one of my highest values. So is having fun. So is connection. Didn't leave myself enough room there. And connection for me covers everything. Family, friends, my relationship with spirit, God, universe, connection to self, to spirit, to others is how I like to think about connection. Creativity is one of my highest values. And under creativity can come adventure, it can come self-reflection, it can come all kinds of things that are under the category of creativity as a value, but nothing's more important in my life than prioritizing my creativity. And when I realized that, my purpose changed. My business focus shifted. How I chose to spend my time changed as well. There's so many things I know that I could put on here, but the other one I would say is loving kindness is one that's always at the top of the list. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And this, for me, includes self-compassion, kindness to others. So this is just a glimpse into core values. Well, loving kindness means seeing all people as equal. Education and art are two of my, and learning are like prominent over here, and those all flow from creativity and connection. Adventures in nature are fun for me. Supporting other people in their reading and writing journeys, fun for me. When the kids were little, that was one of my favorite volunteer jobs, was to spend time with kids who were learning to read and help them sounding out letters, like at the small scale, at a larger scale, donating money to one of my favorite nonprofits, Pencils of Purpose, which builds schools and trains teachers and provides supplies for communities that don't have access, right? So I support causes about literacy that is in integrity with what I do, why I do it, and why, and the impact that I want to have. So values are so important. I'm moving pretty quick here. You guys keeping up with me? I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. Any questions, any insights or ahas as you start to think about how, and I'm going to pull it all together at the end and show you how this can help you get really clear about your purpose. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are you still with me, or are you snoozing in your coffee? You guys are quiet this morning. And if you're brand new and watching this for the first time, I am using my YouTube channel right now as personal support and commitment to working on my book. My 100-day project this year is all about writing my 4th book, and I discovered that I couldn't write my book. I had to draw and art my way through the book as well as talk through it. So if you're here, thank you for listening and supporting me on this journey of talking through my book. And your input and ideas are always invaluable. So if this isn't interesting, that's worth hearing too. Just waking up. I know. I'm bringing all this brainy, heady stuff to people at 7 a.m. my time in the morning. It can be a lot to think about. But thank you, Carol. Appreciate you being here often. All right, the next thing is to explore challenges that we've experienced. A lot of times, our most important work, our deepest impact, the causes that we care most about, and our strengths as well, come from challenges we've faced and experienced. And to really think about the challenges that you've overcome and how did these experiences shape you? What did you learn from them that can guide your future path? Awesome, Tamara. Thank you. Thank you. And so, to give you a couple of examples, our house burned down when I was in the seventh grade. There's a house with some fire. We were fine. Everybody was fine. The dogs were fine, but the house was a total loss. And we lived in a mobile home on the property. We had 2 acres where I grew up behind the house while it was being rebuilt. It was a strange time in our lives, and yet there was a lot of loss of safety, loss of home, parents' divorce, something else that really shook my world, right? I think I was maybe about 8 when that happened. I was in 4th grade. I seem to remember things by grades, right? So this was 4th grade. This was 7th grade. These were fundamental things that rocked my safety. And it has made me always be on a quest for security, right? So if I were to add a core value here that flows directly from my challenges, I would add security, right? I would add security up here. Other big challenges, those were 2 of the big ones from childhood. I would say moving cross country when I went to Stanford and my brother and I drove cross country. I had never lived outside of Texas before. I grew up in San Antonio. I did my undergrad and my master's both in Texas. And then we drove cross country to California. What I love about mind mapping is it can be wordy or it can also be image based. And my brother went with me. It was great. But that move to California was challenging, right? I was thousands of miles away from my family. And the first little while that I was there, my stepmom got cancer. There was another divorce. I was in a new place where I knew no one. I was living with a wonderful, wonderful family who helped me so much. But there were a lot of things that happened, right? I had a bit of a nervous breakdown in my first year of being there where it felt like everything around me was falling apart. That was the first time I went to therapy, and that completely changed my life and helped me get fresh perspective. So I'm a huge fan of therapy, coaching, getting the support that we need. Okay, so challenges. And then let's take a look at our current life. Trying to squish all this in there. So I'm going to call this now. And in this area, I might look at some of the categories. So work or career, relationships, health, contribution. So for me, it's always really important that wherever I'm living, that I'm always actively working and supporting a nonprofit organization in my community with my time. I recently joined my local arts guild and am excited to start volunteering and being supportive in that community because one of my passions is art and education, actually causes that I care about. I would say business too, like helping others to be successful in their businesses is something that I care deeply about. And I've done a lot of it and had a lot of success and made a lot of mistakes, right? And so coming over here and being a member of the Arts Guild is a contribution. So issues related to health. If I connect this back to activities, adventures in nature improve my health, but there's other issues that I know I can work on. My relationships are pretty good right now with my spouse, with my kids. I have amazing girlfriends and community. I love my work. I get to show up and do art and teach and coach every single day things that I love. And I'm doing work that is connected to my passions, right? It's connected to my passions. For example, we have an art retreat that a friend and I are hosting the first full week in June called the Time Travelers Retreat. And during that weekend, we will be making art. We will be learning new things about ourselves and guiding others to learn new things about themselves, and we will be having adventures in nature. So I integrate what I'm passionate about into my work in a way that feels super, super aligned, and it makes me so, so happy. Okay, let's see. I need a new color. So what's your life like now? And you may have other categories that you would want to add here that feel really important to you. And then second, let's see. I'm wondering if I would have put that earlier. Thinking. Okay, so another thing that I want to think about is childhood, but not childhood challenges. I would say childhood dreams, like, lying in the grass, stargazing, right? Or cloud gazing and thinking about what are our dreams for the future. So what were your childhood passions? What were your childhood dreams? And what did you love to do? This is often the very first clue to discovering our purpose is to recover our lost dreams. They got set aside because we were told you can't make a living at it, or it was just a hobby, or trauma happened, right? Things happened along the way, and that set your life in a different direction. But those passions are still there. I have always loved making art. I was the kid with all the coloring books. If I wasn't coloring, I was reading, right? So reading and creativity have been a part of my life since I was a very, very small child. I come from a very creative family. So there were always creative things happening. Sometimes that was in the kitchen. My mom was just a spectacular cook and loved to entertain, or teaching me to sew, or in high school, my stepmom taught me how to make stained glass. So all kinds of those fun passions that were the seeds or the threads of what it is that matters to me now, right? And so if we're stuck thinking about, well, what am I passionate about? Go back to childhood and think about your childhood passions, dreams, and what did you love to do in childhood? Then you also want to take into consideration the other end of your life and think about legacy. I turned 59 this year, and so I'm starting to think about how much longer do I want to work? What do I want people to remember? What can I leave behind that continues to have an impact whether I'm present or not? And so books are one of the ways that I get to have an impact. So my first book came out in 2015, so almost 10 years ago, and it's still selling and people are still reading it and it's still having an impact. I still get emails about it. Carol, it does feel a little mind-boggling. It's not the way that everyone thinks, but it's the way that my brain works, is in this sort of visual way of thinking about it, but this could simply be done in a linear list. So here's the actual handout from your creative renaissance, and all of these things are in writing here that we're talking about. And so this is rather, I am not a linear thinker, and I want to be able to go back and add to my ideas. And so for me, this visual mapping is a great way to think about concepts and continue to let them evolve and grow. And it's a practice, right? It's a practice. And this is a pretty involved one. But if you look at it rather than feeling a little overwhelming, these are just categories of prompts, right? These are your prompts, and just like you would take them to a journal page, but we're taking them to a visual page instead of to a journal page. And if I were to, and I'm drawing this as I go, then yes, the handout would answer a lot of questions for sure. For sure. And again, this is a concept that I teach and use in my year-long Creative Renaissance program. And it's learning to think about these categories a little bit differently. So the cool thing about a mind map, and we're almost through the hard content part of this, is that you can always go back and add to it. So I would leave this maybe on my desk, or, hanging out. And not everyone's a visual thinker. Some of us are very comfortable in the linear. I could maybe put this in a spreadsheet context, and people would love the spreadsheet version. So it's also about understanding what your own learning style is. And my learning style tends to be, I want to see all the things at once. Right? I don't want to pause and read a whole bunch of text. I want to be able to look at a glance. And also, when I look at this, I know there's going to be things that get added. So you notice as I went around and I was over here in challenges, it reminded me of a core value. As I was over here thinking about work, it reminded me of a cause that I'm passionate about, right? And so we can continue to grow the information as we go. But what I want you to take away from this is, if you're trying to define your purpose, these are the categories that you want to consider. These are the categories that you want to consider. If you're clear about your purpose, this is an affirming exercise, but not a necessary exercise. But I love doing exercises like this to remind me that I'm way more clear than I think I am. I can get bogged down in lack of clarity. What I tell myself is lack of clarity, but usually is too many ideas. And this can bring me back to my center and just help me, remind me why I do what it is that I do and how I do it. Yeah, exactly. Just have them floating around. In fact, one of my business besties that we've been masterminding together, wow, for probably going on 6 years this year. And we've started using mind maps for business ideas, and we have floating mind maps that we add to over time. So I have a mind map for my book, right? It's how I have organized 2 out of my 4 books. And they grow. They're not static. They're living documents in a way that a traditional journal can't be, right? In a way that a traditional journal can't be. So the next category that I want to consider is legacy, right? What's the legacy that I want to leave behind? What do I want people to remember about me? So legacy is about impact, right? It's about memories. It's about what do you want people to say about you. But for me, legacy has a lot to do with how I want to package what I care about in a way that it will have an impact on others. So I'll give you an example. One of my friends who is a grandmother is looking, excuse me, for creative ways right now to capture stories in a book form to that she can give to her grandchildren. I have another dear friend who has written, illustrated, and no, she didn't illustrate them, but she's written and published two different children's books for her grandchildren, inspired by her grandchildren, but they're also publicly available. And so her legacy are these beautiful stories that she wrote for her grandchildren, but which also inspire others. It might be photographs. Maybe you're still someone who loves scrapbooking. Like, part of my legacy are those scrapbooks I made for my kids 25 years ago when they were babies. And Connor has like three big ones and Maggie has like one tiny one. It's kind of sad. But scrapbooks, photo albums. My mom has been really looking for photographs lately because it helps us visually capture those memories. My favorite aunt passed away last November, just after her 90th birthday. And my cousin reached out. She's looking for photographs of certain periods of our time that were just such joyful memories in our family, right? So legacy can look at a lot of different ways. I have quilts that my stepdad's grandmother made and beautiful tatted lace. Those things are legacy, right? And more the younger generations, they don't want stuff, right? So how do we create a legacy for our families? How do we create a legacy that lives on and is bigger than ourselves? Yes, what part of us do we want to leave behind? Exactly. Beautiful way to say it. So think about your legacy. So when you're struggling with purpose, and you start to ask, what's my legacy? There's big clues here to how do I want to spend my time in the next decade, in the next 2 decades, in the next 4 decades, depending on your age. And I have people in my communities that are everywhere from 40 to 80, right? And they still care about purpose and legacy. And it's making sure that there's this deep sense of alignment between what you do, why you do it, and that impact you want to have. Another word for impact here could be legacy. So this very scratchy, messy paper is a rough draft of a mind map, not a final draft. So this would be recreated in a way that would be usable over and over again for me and for others. Because here's the thing about purpose. It's not static. It changes as our lives change. It changes as our lives change. So the last one that I want to put on here is, as I consider my life purpose, I also have to consider my limiting beliefs. So these are, oh, I didn't spell that right. That's why it's a draft. These are my fears, my doubts, and this is the voice of my inner critic. Who is sharing big fat stories about why I can't get clear, why I can't live out my purpose, why my purpose feels too big or overwhelming, or why I'll never leave a legacy, right? We all have those inner fears, doubts, and the voice of that inner critic that gets in the way of us really living the life of our dreams. Maybe you were told as a child, you're not very good at that, go do something else. One of my favorite books that came out a couple of years ago is called Your Creative Calling by a guy named Chase Jarvis. He's also the founder of Creative Live, which is a great creative educational platform with a lot of really interesting, wonderful classes. And he tells this story about, as a kid, loving both art and soccer, and he overheard his art teacher telling his parents that he should focus on soccer, and because he wasn't that great at art. And this is heartbreaking for a child to overhear, and so many of us have heard stories like this. And so he shares the story in the book of how he went on to attempt to play professional soccer, hated it. Then he was told he needed to pick a career that would make a good living. So he went to pre-med school, I think, and hated it. And ultimately, he ended up backpacking around Europe, taking photographs, and he found his purpose on that journey, remembered his love of art, and started not only taking amazing photographs himself, but teaching others to take amazing photographs. And that led to his true purpose, which was educating others about really owning and honoring their inner artist and giving voice to that. And so purpose, another word for purpose, is calling. So another question to ask yourself: what's calling you right now? What feels important or urgent? What feels left behind? So these are just some of those key categories to think about and consider as you're seeking a new definition of purpose. The other thing I want to say about purpose is that it's pretty easy to get caught up in all of the hype about how we have one life purpose, and that purpose is going to guide us from the time we're little until the time we die. Well, that's very rare that that happens. There are some people who do discover their purpose young, and that plays out throughout the rest of their lives. But for most of us, it changes and shifts. It shifts with careers, it shifts with family, or choosing not to have a family, or it gets swayed by challenges that we experience, and we become passionate about different causes. So not to think about purpose as this one big thing, but instead to think about it: what is my purpose right now in this moment? What is the best use of my time and my talents? And how can I create a purpose that's aligned with my values, my passions, and those causes that I care about? So that's just a little sneak peek at some of the ways that I support people, both privately and in my year-long program, Your Creative Renaissance, to discover their purpose, because purpose is one part of understanding who we are and remembering that we have value, that we can make a contribution, that we are still relevant, and we are, as a species, human beings need to know their purpose. Right? It's important to us to live a life that's meaningful. And for some of us, it's more important than others. For some people, their purpose is to raise a beautiful family and to help raise their grandkids. Beautiful purpose. For people like artists, their only purpose is to create art and share their art with the world, right? So think about, what is your purpose? And is it possible that you don't just have one, but in Eric Mazel's terminology, you might have several? So start here and then think about, you might have a purpose for your work that's different than your purpose for your health. Although for me, as long as I'm focused on my health, the rest of these things feel so much easier, right? So my purpose right now might be focusing right here. Or my focus might be supporting others. In fact, this is the nature of my work, is helping other people to live out their dreams and their passions. I'm helping several people birth books right now and ideas for books. And that's a super, super fun project. And there's a lot that we have to look at, a lot of limiting beliefs, a lot of remembering what their strengths are, but their passion around the stories they're telling is their legacy. is their legacy? So these things are all interconnected, which is what I love about mind maps. This is a whole picture, not a list of things, right? It is a conceptual reimagining of what's important to me. And over time, I can add to this. It can grow, it can build. It's really fun to do this on a whiteboard or a chalkboard that can get added to. Like there's a lot that needs to get added here. I need to fill out some of these areas, but it's a way to start thinking about who am I? What do I do? Why do I do it? And what's the legacy that I want to leave? So hopefully this was helpful to look at, start to get some glimmers of what is your purpose. And remember, if you're feeling overwhelmed by all the challenges, changes, and transformations that are coming your way in midlife, it's normal. And what's needed most right now is some time for deep reflection on these topics that are niggling at you and that you know if you have clarity will make a big difference in your life. So thank you everyone for joining me. I will be back tomorrow morning to talk about what's your creative superpower. Look forward to seeing you all live or on the replay. And if you're watching the replay, just type replay in the comments and let me know you stopped by so I can say hello. Have an inspired and empowered rest of your day, and I will get a version of this up to link to that you can download and play with as well. So thank you, everybody. I so appreciate you being here, and I will see you guys all soon. Bye, everyone.